Well, and furthermore, Steve, again, it doesn't matter if a listener buys into the prophecy of the popes or they don't. Starting out, I didn't. Chris Putnam didn't. That isn't even what this book is about. What the project is about is that it is very obvious that some very powerful people in the Roman Curia, in the Roman government, do believe in it, and they are approaching the conclave that is going to elect Petrus Romanus, who the prophet of that prophecy foresaw as the coming of a pope who is going to be under the influence of Satan and is going to help give rise to the Antichrist. There are very powerful people in the world who do believe that prophecy. That's the point. And they are committed, they are dedicated to seeing the fulfillment of that prophecy. Now, when you combine that with prophecy, for instance, from the Zohar, here you have a prophecy that's 600 years old. It's inside a collection of books written in medieval Aramaic over, well, actually 700 years old, I should say. And it's in the Hebrew Kabbalah, the Zohar, that is basically a running commentary on the first 5 books of the Bible. But in addition to interpreting Scripture, the Ve'era section includes the signs heralding Mashiach, or the coming of the Messiah, and the fascinating date for the appearance of the Jewish Messiah, who to you and I would be the Antichrist, since they rejected Jesus, and the Bible, New Testament, tells us they're going to accept a false Messiah. The date for his appearance, again, is set in the Zohar in late 2012. You know, Steve, that J.R. Church, A Prophecy in the News, called my office a couple years ago, and he led us through that part of the Zohar that we then published in Apollyon Rising 2012 that revealed what the 2012 research community had never seen before until that time, and that was that the time of Jacob's trouble, the Great Tribulation, which some Catholic scholars are saying begins with the election of Petrus Romanus, that is going to commence, according to this ancient Jewish text, in the year 2012. And furthermore, what's intriguing is that the prophecy in the Zohar sounds almost identical to the prophecy of the popes. It talks about how the kings of the earth will be gathered in Rome. It sounds very much like they're there during a papal conclave, and they are killed when fiery stones or missiles from the sky, that's what some Catholic prophets actually believe the meaning there is, falls upon the city of Rome, and the city of Rome is destroyed. So you have a 900-year-old Catholic prophecy, you have a 700-year-old Jewish prophecy, both of them saying that the false prophet and the Antichrist are arriving in the year 2012. Why did those occult sources believe that? And again, go back to those demons that came out of the homosexual men that ran up to Jesus and said, "Why are you come hither to torment us before the time?" These spirits know something. They know something about, I know you don't like the word dispensations, but they know something about what's another alternative word, dispensations, times, epochs, important periods in time. The demons know something about it. And why are these demonic influences in all these cultures around the world, why have they been for thousands of years, looking forward to the year 2012? You have a false Messiah predicted in a 700-year-old Jewish prophecy to appear in 2012. Similarly, you have a 900-year-old prophecy of the popes that looks to be unfolding in parallel fashion to provide Petrus Romanus in 2012. To that you could include the Mayan calendar, ends in 2012 with the return of their flying dragon god, Kukulkan. The Aztec calendar ends in 2012, and their flying dragon god, Quetzalcoatl, returns. The Cherokee Indian calendar ends in 2012, and their flying rattlesnake god returns. Also, according to the ancient Mayan inscription, and you know that there was a second confirmation of this found in Mexico here about a month and a half ago, that in 2012 the Mayan underworld god Bolanyakteku is going to return. You have the Hindu Kali Yuga calendar that ends in 2012 at the conclusion of the age of the male demon. You have the conclusion of the prophecy on the Great Seal of the United States, the Kume Sibyl's prophecy, pointing to the coming of Antichrist. And thanks to, again, investigative bloodhound, as I called him. I hope that's not an offense, Chris, because I mean it as a compliment. Thanks to him, we now know that, and these through college materials, university materials, that 260 years ago, the leader of the first Great Awakening in America, Jonathan Edwards, Sinners in the Hands of an Angry God, famous preacher, one of the most important original philosophical theologians, one of the greatest early intellectuals. He held a prophetic view based on the 1260 days that the woman will be in the wilderness in Revelation 12:6, and he interpreted those days as the years that the true church would be oppressed by the papists, the popes. This is what Jonathan Edwards believed, and he considered that one of the most likely times for the end of the reign of Antichrist would be 1260 years after AD 756, which was the acceding of temporal power of the popes, which would place, Steve, the arrival of the Antichrist potentially in 2012 with the end of his covenant with Israel, the midst of the week, the beginning of the real tribulation, the part where the trumpets and vial judgments are poured out in their severity, in the year 2016. And this list goes on and on. In 2012, we elect a new president. In 2012, the United Nations gets a new leader. In 2012, Petrus Romanus is likely going to materialize during a final conclave. 130 years after Jonathan Edwards, in 1878, Reverend William J. Reed did the same thing that Jonathan Edwards did to try to establish a date when the papal system would come to an end, and he set it for the year 2012. So what I'm telling you is there is something very strange that has been going on for thousands of years, and what interests me is why are all of these occultic forces in these disparate nations around the world and throughout time, why have they looked to the year 2012 as the arrival of the false prophet and the Antichrist, and then couple that with what is happening in biblical prophecy? Look at the Bible. Look at Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21, Timothy, and look at the signs they give us. There are signs in nature, famine, earthquakes, plagues, signs in the heaven. And there's nobody that could deny right now that in the last decade we've had more of all of the above than in any other time in history. They also provided signs in society. They talked about lawlessness, violence, immorality, selfishness, hedonism, rebellion, despair. And look at your world today and tell me that this isn't happening. They talked about spiritual signs, apostasy in the professing church. They talked about political signs, with Arabs being hostile towards Israel and Russia being a menacing presence towards Israel. They talked about the reunification of Europe. They talked about a movement towards a one-world economy. They talked about technological signs, the genetics revolution. They talked about accelerating signs, population explosion, increases in knowledge. They talked about Israel regathering as a nation. So somebody tell me why, if you look at biblical prophecy, and then look at what these occultic forces have been doing. Somebody tell me why it wouldn't be reasonable to believe that a game is afoot. And I'm telling you, we conclude that it is, and we provide information in Petrus Romanus, the final pope is here, that if you're not prayed up when you read this book, you better not read it.
Absolutely.